It is nice to be here today. I'd have to say, we've almost got British-like weather here today, Jeff. It's
That's very
cold,
appropriate.
it's rainy, and it is appropriate because our special guest today, and I'd like you all to welcome Tom Lodziak.
Woohoo,
Hello
welcome,
there.
Tom.
All
Hi.
right,
Thanks for having
welcome,
me,
Tom.
Jeff.
Yeah. Now, Tom, just a little bit about you, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners already know who you are, but you're a late comer to table tennis, starting table tennis in your mid-20s, which I think is really interesting. We'll ask you a bit about that later. But also now you're a level 2 coach in the UK. And not only that, but you're also the club chairman of Cambridge Parkside Table Tennis Club, and I believe you just didn't step back fast enough, right, when you became chairman.
That's right. Yeah.
But started coaching part-time in 2011, but now a full-time coach, and describe yourself as passionate, and that table tennis coaching is your calling, and I love that. So, Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I have been watching Ping Skills videos for as long as I can remember. You two are kind of the original and still the best YouTubers at table tennis tutorials, and you actually helped me so much throughout my coaching. I always go to your videos for very straightforward, simple, very good advice.
Oh, thank you, Tom. I think what he's saying is we're old, Jeff. I think that's definitely what I heard. No, thanks, Tom. So, Tom, really nice to get a chance to talk to you. And there's a couple of really key things, I think, for me. And the first one is that you started playing in your mid-20s. Now, I think a lot of our listeners as well could really resonate with that. Firstly, why did you start playing table tennis at that sort of age?
Well, I played sort of on and off in my youth, but mainly just with my family. So I kind of, liked table tennis, but I've never, done it more than just as a bit of fun. And then my main passion was football, playing football. Yep. But knee injuries meant that became increasingly difficult. It's like, I've got to do an activity. So I got back into table tennis properly sort of in my mid-20s, started attending a club regularly, and just loved it. It's such a fast-paced sport, and you can feel yourself improve relatively quickly, so you think you're having success, and that encourages you even more. So for me, starting late, there was never any goal in mind. It's just, it was a really fun activity to do, and I just kept going, really.
And how did you find that joining the club process? Was that scary, going to a club?
Yes and no. In that, I think I was living in London at the time, and I attended 2 or 3 clubs. The first club I went in there, and I was just terrified, really. The players would just look so amazingly good, and I played for about an hour, and it was just, I was way out of my depth, and I didn't feel particularly welcomed. I wasn't good enough. They didn't really want me there, so I never went back to that club. But I eventually found a club which was a completely different atmosphere, perhaps a bit more of a mixed standard of players, but the coach there was just so welcoming. He's called Sankit. It was Finsbury Table Tennis Club, and he would welcome anybody, and he'd wrap his arms around you, and he'd encourage you to play. And therefore, it makes such a big difference because you feel like you belong, and rather than feeling like an outsider who nobody really wants there. So it was the atmosphere of the club which made a huge difference to me, and has allowed me then to want to keep on going.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You talk about that. So now, I mean, you're the chairman of your table tennis club. What sort of things are you putting in place now to, I guess, welcome that Tom Lodziak of the 2020s?
Yeah. So, well, before March this year, the club was again very open doors policy, welcomed everybody. We probably had too many people coming along, so we had a bit of a problem of just managing the numbers. But we would work in the same idea. We would welcome everybody, and we would be, we'd match people up with others of a similar ability. There'd be 2 or 3 people helping at the club, just encouraging those new ones and giving them tips, giving them some feedback, but making them feel like they belong. At the moment, it's a little bit harder because we're having to completely restrict the numbers to sort of meet the coronavirus guidelines. We still have the club open, but it's just more restricted, so there's less people who come along. However, we still do have a few more along the beginner lines who are coming along to the club, and again we just do our best to make them feel welcome, give them some advice, and importantly, just tell them that, you know what, if you just keep turning up, if you just keep coming, you will get better and better, and then you will feel like you belong, and then there's going to be another new beginner come, and then you're going to help them develop as well. So it's this trying to create this atmosphere that we always try to help people who perhaps aren't quite as good as us, because that will help them improve, then they can help the next people. And the beginner at the moment, 4 or 5 years time, might end up being a really, really good player.
Yeah, I think building that culture is what you say there is key. And I've seen it so often as well, Tom. You know, you see those clubs like that first club you went to, where it's awkward and it's difficult for players to walk into. But I love what you've done with just building that culture of getting the current players to help the others. Do you find much opposition to that within your club?
I think there's always some players who just want to play with certain other players, and that's fine. You know, we can accommodate that as well. But I think when you set the overall tone of the club that essentially we're all there to help each other, and we encourage people to give each other feedback, and I don't know, the players seem really happy to do so. So I think it's, if you set that culture initially, then everybody can hopefully buy into it, as long as players feel as though they have the opportunity to stretch themselves. So the better players have the opportunity to stretch themselves by having good practice with other players of similar ability, then I think they're perfectly happy to also spend some of the time perhaps helping somebody who isn't quite as strong as them.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, the first time I went to a club, I played in like a handicap competition. So they rated everyone, and you would play in a round robin with people your standard. So because I was just a beginner, I just played people with a beginner. But if you won your group, you got to go into like a knockout draw against other players. So then you got the chance to play some really higher players just in those finals. And so the first time I played, I won through to I won my first matches and got through to the finals, and I played some A grader, and it was like one match up to 31, and he got 27 points head. I got 27 points head start, and he started on -10, and I think I only won 2 points and still won.
Yeah.
But it was good because you got to play your own players, but then you got to see and play against some really good players if you did well. So yeah, I really enjoyed that sort of competition.
So Tom, what sort of activities do you have at your club?
So we would, again, going back to earlier in the year, we would have a mixture of things going on. So there would be just some open play where people can just play with a partner. So really encouraging players to sort of own their own development and think through the drills they're going to use. I'm a big believer in that, not just constantly a coach telling people what to do the whole time. I think it's really important that players think for themselves and take ownership of their development. So there's that type of session. We would also put on some more organized sessions, either with me running a session or bringing in coaches from elsewhere, so something a bit more structured for players who want that. Then of course in England we have quite a strong local league system, so there's opportunity for players to play competitive matches against teams from other parts of Cambridgeshire. So there'd be a mixture of things. I think ideally we'd want to grow the club and do even more things, but we're a bit limited about how often we can use the facilities which we have at the school. So there's no lack of demand for table tennis. It's the biggest issue we have is lack of facilities.
That's awesome. That was a good problem to have in a way, isn't it?
Yeah. So the demand is definitely there. I think table tennis, I feel it's growing in popularity. More people want to do it. It's, can we service their needs as much as possible?
Excellent. Now,
Yeah.
Oh, yep. Sorry,
Yeah,
Alice.
yeah. I think you're right there. If I just wanted to ask you a follow up there, if you did have more time, what sort of other activities do you think would be useful for a club like yours?
Well, so bear in mind we're basically amateur players, so we're not close to sort of having professional standard players playing at our club. So I think on the one hand, just more opportunities to play. I mean, I just look at it in quite a simple way. You have open sessions where people take ownership. You have structured coaching sessions. We'd probably do. If we had more availability, we'd perhaps be able to do a little bit more on the coaching side, perhaps put on a few more sessions. We'd probably be able to do more internal competitive play, but done in such a way in which people can compete against people of a similar standard as them. So people can, if you like, get three important aspects. They take ownership of their own training and they train and they practice. Number two, they get coaching, whether that is group coaching or individual coaching. And three, they get competitive play, whether that is internally within the club or within a league format. And I think if you're combining the three, doing all the practice, doing the coaching and applying all of that in competitive play, then you get this lovely kind of feedback loop where you play the matches, you work out, I need to improve on this, you go and practice that, maybe I need to get some coaching help because there's something I'm not quite doing well, and it can all sort of feed into each other. So I don't think we need to overcomplicate how we do clubs, but as long as there's opportunities for people to practice, opportunities for people to learn, and opportunities for people to compete, for me, that is a very nice club setting for amateur table tennis players.
Definitely. It's so nice to hear something just simple that makes sense. You don't want to hear this too complicated. Whenever you hear these plans and you think that sounds really complicated, you're like, there's got to be something wrong with it. But if it's just nice and simple, it's like, I understand that, I can follow that. Yeah, it's good.
And most players, they just want to play table tennis. They just want to be on the table hitting balls, having fun. Let's not lose sight of that as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So Tom, I guess you had those challenges when you came into the game. So now you're a level 2 coach in the UK. What drew you to coaching? So as opposed to that guy at 25, 26 going in and starting to play, was there a switch that suddenly thought, oh, maybe I can help others?
Like much of these things, it just kind of happened by me refusing to say no. It's like, oh yeah, I'll help out with that. So in London, there was one main coach, Sankit, and then he was asking if other people wanted to help out, start their coaching license. And I was like, yeah, okay, then I'll do that. So I started with, did my first qualification, then did a little bit of coaching and thought, oh, this is nice. I'm enjoying helping other people. And I kind of felt I could really, their problems I could really understand because essentially they were my problems as well. So when they're struggling with a particular shot or particular thing, it's like, yeah, I completely understand because I have this problem as well. So I've kind of felt really connected to the players that I coach, and I could completely understand the problems they had because they were exactly the problems I was going through. So that kind of gave me some initial encouragement to keep coaching because I was enjoying it. I felt I was helping people. Plus, I really quickly discovered that there's this huge gap at the moment in terms of coaching structures. So much of the coaching is geared towards juniors, quite rightly so. We want to develop our juniors, we want to make them good. But there's this mass of adults who are desperate, absolutely desperate to learn, and they would love to have coaching as well. But there's no one to coach them. And I thought, hang on a second, I'm an adult, I want to be coached. Why wouldn't you coach adults? You can keep playing table tennis until you drop. You can play into your 80s, into your 90s. So even if you start at 60, you still, if you live in good health, you can still play table tennis for an awful long time. So for me, it's kind of like, well, it doesn't matter if you're a junior or you're a 70-year-old. If you want to improve, if you have that desire to improve, then why not? So by me then starting to offer my services, I was just kind of being inundated really with people who want to be coached, and primarily adults.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And That's what we found with all our ping skills videos too. A lot of people that watch them are people that maybe played when they were younger, but then they had kids and, life just got really busy. And then when the kids have got older, they got a bit more time. Like, I want to come back to the game. I love it. Want to get better. And so exactly what you're saying.
It's such a common story. The amount of people who said exactly that story to me. I played when I was younger. I haven't played for 30 years. Going to get back into it. Or another one is, I used to play other sports, but I can't do that now, so I want to play table tennis instead. So it's also a game for people who are injured by other sports.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Tom, coaching those adults, what do you see as the keys for an adult starting to learn the game?
Yeah, so you've got a couple of different adults. You've got adults who really are starting out and who are beginners. In a way, that's quite easy because you can kind of get the good principles into them early. You don't have to undo too many bad habits. So there's a few beginners who really I've coached really, and they haven't hit the ball much before. So one way, that's easy. The real hard ones are the adults who have played previously and have got all kinds of weird and wonderful technique, and how you can go about improving them. Because we all know that once a technique has become quite embedded within your muscle memory, it is a heck of a challenge to try and undo that. So one of the key challenges of adults is, I think, trying to work out how much you try to change someone's technique or how much you try to work with the technique they have. Because you can spend an enormous amount of time trying to change someone's habit, but the habit is so ingrained that you end up just messing them up even more. So is there another way of doing it? Is it saying, okay, technically what you're doing might not be, as good as a professional player, but if we can make it consistent, if we can make it reliable, it can still be effective. And therefore, you don't have to waste all this time completely changing the way you play. You can take the advantages of what you have, which might be a little bit unusual, unorthodox, but that can still be hugely effective at amateur level table tennis.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, I think that's really good, Tom. I think, I mean, there's definitely not one way of doing anything in this game, but
I think that's true of kind of any sport and stuff. Like I've been watching a lot of the cricket lately, and you look at Steve Smith batting, and he just defies all the rules about how you should bat, yet he's one of the best batters in the world. So, I mean, especially at amateur level, why try and change something if it's going to be hard when you can still make improvements in other areas? Yeah.
And I think at amateur level, I mean, for most people, their goals is maybe just to improve their win percentage, maybe move up a division, maybe beat a player they've not beaten before. And so their goals are much more modest. So therefore, you don't have to play like a professional. At amateur level, you can really play any particular playing style you want and actually have lots of success and reach the top division of your league or something like that, or be one of the best players in your club. So it provides a huge scope of how you can play table tennis. And for me, that's really fascinating. It's fun because you don't have to get everybody to play in exactly the same topspin way. There's huge scope for playing in different ways, and it's very varied, and it makes it a lot of fun, I think.
I think something you said earlier resonates with me too, Tom, and about the club and the structure. So you talked about they have the opportunity to play some games, and then they have the opportunity to make some changes in that practice type scenario. And I think thinking about it that way makes a lot of sense to me. So what does your game look like, and what do I need to then